Imagine going to the doctor with a severe physical fever. Like you're sweating, your joints ache, your head is absolutely pounding.
Right.
You sit on the exam table, and the very first thing the physician examines isn't your throat, and it isn't your blood pressure.
Yeah, they don't even reach for a thermometer.
Exactly. Instead, they sit down, look you right in the eye, and ask to examine your spiritual doubts.
It's so wild to think about.
It really is. They asked about your hidden hypocrisies. And they do this not as, a polite bedside manner or small talk, but because they genuinely believe your intellectual dissonance is a literal physical pathogen.
Which completely shatters our modern expectation of what a diagnosis even is, right?
Mm.
I mean, we are so used to the precision of a blood test or an X-ray. You see the jagged line of a broken bone, you cast it, you fix it.
Yeah, it's very mechanical, very isolated.
Right. But the framework we are looking at today completely rejects that separation. It just doesn't exist for them.
And that is exactly what we're getting into. We have an incredibly fascinating stack of source material today. We are doing a deep dive into an extensive historical text that translates and analyzes Ibn Qayyim's 14th century work on prophetic medicine.
Such a rich text.
Oh, it's massive. It is a deeply systemic, ancient Islamic worldview that just flat out refuses to separate the physical body from the health of the soul. So our mission today for this deep dive is to explore this text, to figure out how this highly complex, holistic philosophy actually worked in practice.
And you really have to put yourself in the mindset of the era to grasp the ambition of this text. I mean, the author is synthesizing divine revelation with highly practical observational science.
Which is a tough tightrope to walk.
Oh, absolutely. It's a text that looks at the human being as this intricately balanced ecosystem. So the environment, your diet, your soul, and the divine are all active, moving gears in the exact same biological machine.
And just to give you, the listener, a map of where we are heading today. We are going to explore everything from the mechanical root causes of all diseases to the heavy theological paradox of whether taking medicine goes against the concept of destiny.
That destiny debate is mind-bending.
We'll even get into a massive historical dispute about ancient Greek physics and whether literal fire exists inside the human body.
Spoiler alert, they have strong opinions on that.
Very strong. But to understand any of that, we have to start at the bedrock. According to this text, all illness is divided into two distinct spheres. Basically, diseases of the heart and physical diseases of the body.
Right, and we need to immediately clarify what is meant by the heart here.
Yeah, because we aren't talking about cardiology.
No, not at all. If you're picturing the muscular organ pumping blood through your veins, you have to completely discard that image. In this historical theological context, the heart is basically the CPU of the human being.
The central processing unit.
Exactly. It is the spiritual and intellectual center. It's the seat of emotion, of intention, and morality.
So when the text talks about a disease of the heart, it's not talking about like high cholesterol or an arrhythmia.
Exactly. It's talking about spiritual, emotional, and intellectual distress.
Mm-hmm.
And the text doesn't just wave its hands and say, oh, it's a spiritual sickness. It gets incredibly granular.
Right.
It actually divides these diseases of the heart into two very specific subtypes. So the first one is doubt and error.
Okay, let's unpack that. Because how does doubt act as a disease? To a modern ear, doubt is just a passing thought. It's skepticism, right?
Yeah.
How is that a pathogen?
Well, the author grounds this in specific Quranic verses to explain the actual mechanism. The disease of doubt or error is essentially an intellectual ailment linked to hypocrisy or the willful rejection of truth.
Okay.
It's a state of profound cognitive dissonance. So the text quotes a verse saying, in their hearts is a disease, meaning doubt and hypocrisy, and Allah has increased their disease. The underlying logic here is that intellectual stubbornness, like knowing what is true or right, but actively living in opposition to it, that creates a structural stress within the human soul.
So it's not just being unsure about something, it's living a lie.
Exactly. And critically, it compounds. It is an actively spreading infection.
It's a pathogen of the mind. I mean, the more you feed the hypocrisy, the more the dissonance spreads, weakening the entire system.
Precisely. You're constantly fighting your own internal reality. And then there's the second subtype of heart disease, which is lust and desire.
Okay, so if doubt is an intellectual ailment,
Lust is a moral and behavioral one, yes. The text references another verse advising women not to be overly soft in speech, lest someone in whose heart is a disease should be moved with evil desire.
So in this case, the disease isn't an intellectual blind spot. It's an unchecked, overwhelming biological or emotional impulse.
Right.
It's basically an appetite that is broken out of its cage and is just overriding the system's morality.
Yes, and this is where we really have to understand the mechanics of why this matters for physical health. I mean, for a long time, Western medicine treated the physical body as an entirely separate machine from the mind.
Oh, totally. The whole Cartesian dualism thing, mind over here, body over there.
Exactly. But this text argues that if the heart's lower animal lusts overpower its true nature, there is zero possibility of true physical well-being. It's physically impossible.
I'm trying to, picture how this operates mechanically. Think of the body as a high-performance combustion engine.
Okay, I like that.
Treating the physical body without treating the heart is like constantly changing the oil and replacing the spark plugs, but ignoring the fact that you are pouring contaminated fuel into the gas tank.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. The contaminated fuel is the doubt, the hypocrisy, the unchecked destructive desires. You can polish the outside of the engine all you want, you can tune it up, but if the fuel is corrupt, the internal components are going to inevitably tear themselves apart.
That engine analogy hits it exactly. The text explicitly states that errors occur when people confuse the heart's true well-being with the mere satisfaction of these lower animal instincts.
Because satisfying a craving feels good in the moment.
Right, it feels like health or happiness. But by feeding the engine the corrupted fuel, the heart is actually distanced from its true strength. The author actually uses a terrifying phrase here.
What does he say?
He says, those who cannot distinguish between the true health of the soul and the mere gratification of desires are completely submerged in an ocean of darkness.
Wow. Submerged in an ocean of darkness. I mean, if you are operating in that ocean, no amount of physical medicine is going to save you. Your engine is flooded.
And that sets the stakes for everything that follows in the text. Because once the text establishes that this spiritual foundation, the heart, absolutely must be addressed, it then pivots to the actual physical science of treating the biological body.
So we move from the spiritual to the biological.
Yes. And it builds this physical medicine on three absolute divine pillars.
Right. So if the fuel is clean, how do we actually maintain the engine? The text outlines three basic rules of physical medicine. Number one is preserving good health. Number two is avoiding harm, which is essentially establishing immunity or preventing injury. And number three is ridding the body of harmful substances.
Honestly, every physical remedy, every diet, every surgery or preventative measure throughout human history falls under one of those three pillars. It's a very solid framework.
It really is. But what is truly wild about this text is how the author proves these rules are the foundation of medicine.
Yeah, his methodology is entirely unexpected.
It blew my mind. He doesn't cite clinical trials. He doesn't cite ancient Greek medical texts. He proves the validity of these three medical rules by citing religious jurisprudence.
It is fascinating.
Specifically, he looks at the legal exemptions granted during the most sacred rituals in Islam.
It is a staggering rhetorical move. He is literally looking at divine law and reverse engineering the biology from it.
Okay, break that down for us.
Let's look at the pillar of preserving health. The author looks at the mandate of fasting during the month of Ramadan. Now, this is a core religious obligation. It's non-negotiable for a healthy adult. But the text highlights the Qur'anic exemption. It says, but if any of you is ill or on a journey, the same number should be made up from other days.
So the legal allowance to break the fast.
Exactly, and the author extracts a medical law directly from this religious law. He asks, why did God allow the sick person to break the fast?
Because fasting is hard.
Because fasting requires immense biological energy. If you are ill, your body needs all its available energy to fight the sickness. If you withhold nourishment, you weaken the body's defense.
Okay, I see where he's going.
Therefore, preserving physical strength and health literally overrides the immediate execution of a sacred religious ritual.
That is profound. The theology is validating the medical methodology, and it gets even more intense when he proves the third pillar, right? The one about ridding the body of harmful substances. He uses the Hajj pilgrimage for this.
Yes, the Hajj. So during this pilgrimage, Muslims enter a sacred state of consecration called ihram.
And the rules in that state are strict.
Incredibly strict. You cannot hunt, you cannot wear certain types of clothes, and crucially for this argument, you cannot cut your hair or shave your head. It's forbidden until the rites are complete.
But again, there is a legal exemption.
Right. The text points out that if a pilgrim in the state of Ihram has a severe ailment of the scalp, like a painful skin condition, or, say, a severe infestation of lice, they are divinely permitted to shave their head early.
Even though it's normally a major violation of the ritual.
Exactly. They have to offer a form of compensation, like fasting or feeding the poor, but the physical act of shaving is permitted to relieve the suffering.
Okay, stop there. Because the medical rationale the author pulls from this is fascinating to me. Why shave the head? By shaving the hair, you are opening up the pores, exposing the scalp, and allowing the harmful substances, the vapors, the infection, the parasites, to be expelled.
Right.
The text argues that this proves a universal medical law. Ridding the body of what is actively harming it takes absolute precedence over ritual.
The author is essentially saying, look at the law of the Creator. The Creator himself suspends a sacred ritual rule to allow a human to expel a toxin. Therefore, the expulsion of harmful substances is not just, a good idea. It is a divine mandate of human biology.
If the root of disease is blocked flow, then the doctor's job is to unblock it. Which leads us to one of the most specific and frankly surprising lists in this entire deep dive. The text outlines the 10 accumulations.
Yes. The 10 basic elements of the human body that, if suppressed or allowed to congest, will inevitably cause illness.
Okay, here is the list from the text. Blood, sperm, urine, excrement, air, vomit, the urge to sneeze, sleep, hunger, and thirst.
It is a very comprehensive biological inventory of human urges and outputs.
Okay, I have to push back here because I need to understand the mechanism. It's very easy for a modern person to see how sleep deprivation kills you. Obviously, withholding urine or excrement leads to literal toxicity and ruptured organs.
Right, sepsis, all of that.
Yeah, and suppressing a sneeze is uncomfortable, sure. But how on earth does the text view air or blood as something that needs to be expelled? Blood is the one thing you desperately want to keep inside the body.
It's a really great question, and you have to look at it through the lens of ancient humoral theory and this overarching concept of flow. The text is very careful with its caveats, actually. It says blood when it is contaminated or excessive, and sperm when it is excessive. It's not advocating for draining a healthy person of vital fluids for no reason.
Oh, okay, so it's about a plumbing issue.
Exactly. It's about stagnation. In ancient and medieval medicine, there was a profound, almost primal fear of fluids pooling and stagnating in the body.
Right.
I mean, think about nature. Stagnant water in nature breeds disease, mosquitoes, rot.
Yeah, a stagnant pond is gross.
Right. So they believe stagnant fluids in the body did the exact same thing. This is why cupping, or hijama, and controlled bloodletting were primary frontline treatments.
Get the old blood out.
Yes. The goal was to draw out the bad, deoxygenated or stagnant blood that was pooling in muscles or extremities to force the body to generate fresh circulation.
Okay, that explains the blood. It's about refreshing the supply. What about the air? I mean, we breathe constantly.
But think about the digestive tract. The air here isn't the oxygen in your lungs. It's the expulsion of trapped gases in the stomach and intestines.
Oh, right.
Yeah. In this medical framework, if digestion creates vapors and gases and you suppress the release of that air, it creates massive internal pressure. That pressure pushes against organs, it causes severe bloating, and they believed it fundamentally altered the internal temperature of the body.
So it really is a philosophy of biological momentum. Things have to keep moving.
Yes. And when the text mentions sleep, hunger, and thirst as accumulations, it's referring to the accumulation of a deficit.
The accumulation of a deficit. That's an interesting way to phrase it.
If you constantly ignore your body's signal to eat, you are accumulating depletion. If you ignore the signal to sleep, you're accumulating fatigue toxins. Stagnation equals sickness. If you constantly bottleneck your body's natural release valves, you are literally brewing a disease.
So if disease is caused by these accumulations, how do we actually treat it? The text divides physical remedies into two distinct categories. And the first category is incredibly empowering because it essentially says you don't need a doctor.
Right. The first category is what the text calls instinctual ailments and remedies. These are the biological responses shared by all living creatures, humans and animals alike.
It's the stuff that requires zero medical degree, responding to hunger by eating, thirst by drinking. If you are freezing, you instinctively seek fire or warmth. If you are exhausted, you lie down.
It's hardwired into us.
Right. The text explicitly says there is no need for the doctor to cure this type of illness. You just follow the instinct to clear the accumulation.
But then we reach the second category, and this is where the physician must step in. The text says these ailments require deep thought and analysis. These are complex sicknesses that require the doctor to subdue the ailment and, crucially, moderate the patient's temperament.
Okay, we need to pause and establish what temperament means here, because this is the operating system of historical medicine, and it's not your personality or your mood, like being grumpy.
No, no. When this text in medieval medicine in general talks about temperament, it's talking about the Galenic framework.
Right, from Galen, the Greek physician.
Exactly. It's the balance of 4 baseline qualities in the human body: heat, coldness, dryness, and wetness.
How does that actually work in practice? Like, what does it mean to be hot and dry?
Well, they believed that every single person had a baseline balance of these 4 qualities, and it was heavily influenced by their environment, their diet, their age, even their profession. A healthy person is in a state of equilibrium for their specific body type. But complex ailments like fevers, deep infections, chronic conditions, those throw this equilibrium completely out of whack.
The text makes a fascinating distinction here. It says physical ailments happen when something tangible is wrong, like a cut or an immediate toxin in the stomach. But temperamental ailments occur after the physical cause is gone, yet the effects remain and permanently alter the body's baseline state.
Yes, exactly. Imagine you get a really severe stomach infection. The physical cause is whatever bad food you ate. Your body fights it off, maybe you vomit, and it expels the toxin.
So the invader is gone.
Right. But the sheer trauma of that infection might leave your stomach lining inflamed and overly hot, or it might leave your entire digestive system depleted and overly dry.
So the initial invader is gone, but the battlefield is ruined.
That's a perfect way to put it, yes. The text details how these ailments physically alter the organs themselves. It actually lists 8 ways an organ can be changed.
8 ways.
Yeah, things like its shape, its internal cavity, the state of its blood vessels, its texture, like becoming rough or smooth, its palpability, its number, its bones, and so forth. And when the organ changes physically like that, it loses its proper connectivity to the rest of the body.
And that loss of connectivity results in these temperamental shifts. The text breaks them down systematically. You have simple shifts, right? Like a body running just too cold, too hot, too wet, or too dry.
Right.
And then you have compound shifts, which sound awful. Hot and wet, hot and dry, cold and wet, or cold and dry.
This is the absolute core of Greco-Arab medicine. And because the system is so complex with so many variables, the text mandates a very strict, uncompromising sequence of analysis for the doctor. You cannot just guess.
You need an order of operations.
Exactly. The diagnostic order is this. You look at the cause first, the ailment second, and the cure third.
Cause, ailment, cure. I mean, it sounds like basic common sense, but the text emphasizes it because jumping straight to the cure is incredibly dangerous in this framework.
Well, it can be fatal.
Right. Let's say the ailment is a raging fever. If the doctor just gives a medicine designed to artificially freeze the body the cure, they've completely skipped the cause. Why is there a fever? Is it because the person has a hot and wet accumulation in their blood? Or is it because an organ's texture has become rough and is creating friction?
Exactly.
If you don't treat the root cause, you're just masking the symptom while the engine continues to tear itself apart internally.
Precisely. And the methodology for the actual cure is based entirely on the law of opposition.
The law of opposition.
The physician must introduce the antidote, which, in this framework, means the exact temperamental opposite of the ailment. That's how you restore the body's normal state.
Okay, so if the patient is suffering from a hot and dry temperamental shift, the doctor prescribes foods, herbs, and environments that are inherently cold and wet.
Yes, you are basically playing a constant high-stakes game of physiological tug-of-war. The text describes this beautifully. It says the body exists in one of 3 states: normal, abnormal, and a transitional state in the middle. The entire art of medicine is grabbing the body when it's in that abnormal state and using these oppositional remedies to slowly, carefully drag it back through that middle state until it settles into its normal equilibrium.
It's like landing a plane. You have to adjust the pitch and yaw constantly.
Exactly.
Okay, this system is incredibly intricate. You have organs changing texture, compound temperaments, neutralizing opposites. But as I was reading this, I kept hitting a wall.
What do you mean?
Where on earth did they get this information? I mean, before microscopes, before double-blind clinical trials, before peer-reviewed journals, how did ancient humans figure out that a specific root cools down a hot and dry liver?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the text tackles this exact question, and it gives us one of the most vivid, cinematic looks into the origins of human knowledge.
I love this part.
It fully acknowledges that a massive portion of medical science comes from trial, error, and logical deduction. But it gives an enormous amount of credit to observing the animal kingdom.
The animal observations. This was easily my favorite part of the source material. The text paints these highly specific scenes of early humans basically learning how to heal by watching animals self-medicate.
The scientific term for this today is zoopharmacognosy, and the examples the author provides are just stunning.
Let's walk through them because they're so cool. The text describes early humans observing a cat. So the cat accidentally or intentionally swallows a venomous creature, the poisonous bug or a small reptile.
Right.
The human observer realizes the cat is in mortal danger. It's been poisoned. But then they watch the cat immediately seek out a lamp and start aggressively licking the lamp oil.
Now think about the deductive reasoning required by the human observer there. They realize the cat knows it has ingested a toxin and instinctually knows that the heavy, viscous nature of the oil will either coat its stomach or chemically neutralize the venom.
The cat just knows.
The human watches the cat survive this and realizes, oh, oil can be an antidote to venom.
It's incredible. And the text has more of these. It mentions observing a snake that has developed a painful ailment in its eyes. The snake naturally slithers through the brush, seeks out a specific plant fennel leaves, and actively rubs its ailing eyes against the fennel to cure the condition.
Which is such a specific botanical observation.
Right, or observers watching constipated birds fly all the way to the ocean just to sip seawater, using the heavy salt concentration as a natural laxative.
It is a profound validation of folk medicine and naturalistic observation. The author is openly admitting that humans built the foundation of pharmacology by being quiet, humble observers of the natural world. Let the animals teach us.
But in the text, the author builds up this beautiful observational science of humans learning from animals, only to sharply pivot and contrast it with prophetic medicine.
Yes, this is where the theological worldview reasserts itself strongly.
Right.
The author argues that no matter how much we learn from watching a snake rub its eyes on fennel or how many herbs we experiment with over generations, human observation is inherently limited. It is ultimately guesswork. He says comparing human scientific knowledge to divine revelation is literally like comparing a drop of water to the ocean.
The argument is that prophetic medicine is informed directly by the creator of the biological machine itself. It's like the prophets are handing down the owner's manual from the manufacturer.
Exactly. Why guess when you can read the manual? And practically, this divine guidance manifests in a very specific, fiercely defended preference for how medicine should be consumed. The text points out that the prophet, his companions, and desert cultures like the Arabs and nomads heavily preferred simple, single-ingredient medicines.
Just one thing at a time.
Right. And it actively, aggressively pushes back against compound, multi-ingredient mixtures, the complex pharmacopoeia used by the Romans, the Greeks, and the city dwellers.
I have to challenge the text's logic on this. Because modern pharmacology is almost entirely based on compound medicines. I mean, we combine a painkiller with an anti-inflammatory and a decongestant in one pill. Why did this author and this ancient framework view single ingredients as divinely superior to compound ones?
It all comes down to the relationship between diet, environment, and the complexity of the disease. The text's logic is actually quite sound when you understand their baseline. The author argues that medication must mirror the regular foods the patient is accustomed to eating.
Okay, walk me through that.
So people in nomadic or deep desert cultures had very simple elemental diets. Because their diets were simple, their bodily temperaments were relatively stable, and therefore their ailments were usually simple. A simple one-variable ailment requires a simple one-variable medication.
So if you just have a basic hot imbalance from being out in the sun, you just need a basic cold herb.
Exactly. One lock, one key. But city dwellers, like the Romans, the urban Greeks, they had incredibly complex diets. They ate rich, varied, multi-ingredient meals that were heavily spiced and processed.
The fancy food.
Right. This complex diet created complex, tangled accumulations in the body, which resulted in highly compound ailments.
A knot of different sicknesses all at once.
Right. And to treat a compound ailment, urban doctors had to create compound, multi-substance mixtures, hoping to hit all the different variables at once.
Okay, I see the historical context, but why the strict warning against compound medicines? Why not just use them if they cover more bases? Just hit the body with a shotgun blast of medicine and hope it works.
Because of the risk of iatrogenic harm.
Which is illness caused by the medical treatment itself.
Exactly. The text warns that if you introduce a complex medicine with 5 different active ingredients into a body that only has a simple, one-variable ailment, 4 of those ingredients have absolutely nothing to fight.
Oh, wow.
So what do? They become foreign toxins. The body now has to expend vital energy to expel the very medicine that was supposed to heal it, creating a brand new accumulation.
It's like sending 5 armies to fight one guy, and then the other 4 armies get bored and start looting the town.
That is exactly it.
The text has a direct quote on this. It says, "If an illness can be fought with diet and nourishment alone, you should avoid medicine entirely."
It's the ultimate principle of medical minimalism. Keep it simple. Let food be thy medicine. If food fails, use one ingredient.
But just as the text establishes this very logical, conservative, rational approach to herbalism, it takes a massive reality-bending leap. We go from fennel and single-ingredient herbs straight into the metaphysical realm. The text makes an unequivocal claim. Spiritual cures are demonstrably, physically more powerful than regular medicine.
It asserts it as an undeniable primary truth, not a metaphor. The author states that remedies like prayer, charity, repenting, seeking forgiveness, showing meekness before God, and helping the vulnerable are medical interventions that have been tried by various nations and found to be vastly more effective than anything a physician can prescribe.
And we aren't talking about, like, a placebo effect for a mild headache or feeling a little down. The text gives a dramatic, highly specific example. It recounts an instance where a person was stung by a venomous scorpion. The cure wasn't the oil the cat drank. The cure was the recitation of Surah al-Fatiha, the opening chapter of the Qur'an.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. We were just talking about zoopharmacognosy and logical deduction, the mechanical laws of hot and cold. Now, the text is claiming that reciting a verse neutralizes literal physical scorpion venom. How does the author reconcile that leap? The text claims the recitation removed the effects of the poison so completely that the person stood up as if they never suffered any pain. How does that work mechanically in this framework?
I know, for a modern listener, this is the hardest paradigm shift to make. It sounds like magic to us. But within the author's ecosystem, it is perfectly internally logical.
Okay, help me wrap my head around it.
Remember the engine analogy from earlier? The heart is the CPU. The text is arguing that when the heart and soul deeply connect to the Creator, the entity that engineered both the scorpion's venom and the human bloodstream, the soul develops an immense spiritual strength.
Right.
This spiritual strength actively cooperates with the physical body. It generates a biological resolve, a surge of innate energy that completely overwhelms and neutralizes the physical ailment. It is the ultimate manifestation of the mind-body connection, supercharged by divine alignment. The spiritual energy literally burns out the physical toxin.
It's treating the highest possible variable. If God controls the physics of the venom, appealing directly to God bypasses the need for a herbal antidote entirely.
Exactly. You go over the head of the medicine straight to the boss.
Which brings us to what I think is the most fascinating, difficult intellectual knot in the entire deep dive. It is a massive theological paradox.
The Tawakkul debate. The debate over destiny and reliance on God.
Exactly. Because if you believe in an all-powerful, omniscient God who decrees every single thing that happens in the universe, if God destined you to get sick, isn't taking medicine actively fighting against God's will?
It's a profound question.
If you truly rely on God, if you have true tawakkul, shouldn't you just lie down, accept the fever, and wait for God to either heal you or let you die? Why intervene?
It is the ultimate collision of predestination and free will, but specifically in the context of human biology. And the text does not shy away from it. It faces the paradox head-on by quoting a historical interaction between the prophet and a group of Bedouins.
Set the scene for us. Who are these Bedouins?
You have to imagine these Bedouins. These are people of the deep desert. They live incredibly harsh, fatalistic lives where nature, the sun, the sand, the drought often dictates survival. They don't have the illusion of control that city people have.
All right, they are at the mercy of the elements.
So they come to the prophet, and they essentially ask this exact philosophical question. They say, "O messenger of Allah, should we seek medicine?" They are basically asking for permission to intervene in what they perceive as divine destiny.
And what is the response?
The prophet replies with a definitive mandate. He says, Yes, O slaves of Allah, seek medicine, for Allah has not created a disease, except that he has also created its cure, except for one illness.
And they ask what the exception is?
Right, and he says old age. He further elaborates, Allah has not sent down a disease, except that he also sent down its cure. Whoever knows it, and whoever is unaware of it is unaware of it.
That last line, whoever knows it, and whoever is unaware of it is unaware of it. I find that so incredibly moving.
It is.
In a time of immense medical ignorance and suffering, it is a blazing endorsement of scientific research. It is telling humanity, the cures exist in the dirt, in the plants, in the environment right now. It is your job to go find them.
It transforms medicine from a desperate guess into a divine scavenger hunt. God hid the cures. Go find them.
The text still doesn't quite resolve the paradox for me. If God willed the disease to enter my body, why am I supposed to fight it?
The text reframes the very geometry of how we view destiny to answer this. It argues that taking medicine is also part of God's destiny. You are not fighting against destiny.
Yeah.
You are using one destiny to repel another destiny.
Using destiny to repel destiny. Break that down for me because it sounds like a riddle.
The author uses a brilliantly simple, undeniable analogy: hunger.
Okay.
He says avoiding medicine because sickness is destined is like refusing to eat when you are starving. Hunger is a physical condition destined and decreed by God, right? But do you sit in your house and starve to death claiming, well, God destined me to be hungry, so I won't fight it?
No, obviously not. You eat a piece of bread.
Exactly. And the bread is also destined. The physical act of chewing and swallowing is destined. Food is the destined cure for the destined condition of hunger. You put an end to one condition by deploying another condition that satisfies it.
That makes total sense.
The text also compares it to defending yourself. If an enemy attacks your city, that attack might be destined. But your struggle to put on armor, pick up a sword, and repel the enemy is also a commandment and a destined action.
So the disease, the medicine, and the doctor administering the medicine are all equally woven into the exact same tapestry of destiny.
Yes. In fact, the text springs a logical trap here. It argues that abandoning medicine is actually a violation of true reliance on God.
How so?
Because God commanded you to seek the cure.
So denying medicine under the guise of being super spiritual is actually just disobedience. The text actually says, would you accept such reasoning from your servant if they refuse to do what you have ordered them to do and then blame your overarching will for their disobedience?
It completely dismantles the excuse of fatalism. You can't just be lazy and blame God. And the text backs this up with a beautiful tradition regarding the prophet Ibrahim, or Abraham.
Oh, I remember this.
The story goes that Ibrahim asks God, where does disease come from? God replies, from me. Ibrahim asks, where does the cure come from? God says, from me. Ibrahim then asks the logical follow-up question, what is the role of the doctor then?
And God's response?
A man by whose hands I send and cause the cure.
That completely elevates the physician. The doctor isn't just a mechanic tinkering with pipes. They are an instrument of divine delivery. And the text explores the profound psychological impact this has on the patient. When a sick person truly internalizes this, when they believe down to their bones that a cure absolutely exists somewhere and that the doctor is actively trying to find it, the text says the doors of positive anticipation open wide.
Their heart fills with hope rather than despair. And in this holistic framework, that hope isn't just, a nice fuzzy feeling. That psychological boost strengthens the innate, instinctive energy of the soul, which physically helps the body's immune system dissipate the disease. It is spiritual fortification actively aiding biology.
But it all loops back to action. You don't just pray, you act. You seek the medicine. You alter your behavior. Which brings us to the preventative side of this deep dive. Because the text doesn't just want to cure you when you are broken. It wants to maintain the engine so it never breaks down in the first place.
Right.
And the absolute cornerstone of this preventative maintenance is diet.
Diet is the ultimate preventative medicine in this framework. And it centers on the famous prophetic dietary rule regarding the capacity of the stomach.
It is a strict, almost mathematical formula. 1/3 of the stomach for food, 1/3 for drink, and 1/3 for breathing.
It is a profound exercise in physical restraint. The text quotes a saying, "The son of Adam never fills a vessel worse than his stomach. The son of Adam only needs a few bites that would sustain him, but if he insists, 1/3 should be reserved for his food, another third for his drink, and the last third for his breathing."
I really want to focus on the visceral, mechanical way the author describes what happens when you violate this rule. Because anyone who has ever eaten a massive holiday dinner, like Thanksgiving or Eid, can feel this description in their bones.
Oh, absolutely.
The text says that when the stomach is entirely 100% full of solid food, there is literally no room for drink. And when you force drink on top of that compacted food, the stomach expands upward.
You are physically compressing your diaphragm and your lungs.
Exactly. Breathing becomes labored and difficult. You start panting after eating. And the consequence isn't just discomfort. It brings about intense laziness and fatigue. The person feels heavy, as if they are literally carrying a load on their stomach. The energy required to digest that massive, compacted brick of food drains the rest of the body. The text states unequivocally that eating until satiety as a matter of habit weakens the strength and the body.
And notice how this completely challenges our modern intuition. I mean, we often equate eating a large, hearty meal with gaining energy and strength. We think more fuel equals more power.
But the engine analogy breaks down if you flood the engine. You choke it.
Precisely. The text says the body gains strength only from the nourishment it actually needs and can efficiently utilize. Sheer quantity is a poison. Eating too much creates going all the way back to the beginning of our deep dive and accumulation. An excess of half-digested substances that stagnate in the gut, alter the temperaments, and constitute the root cause of the vast majority of diseases.
But speaking of temperaments and the internal mechanics of the body, this text features a massive, incredibly detailed divergence into ancient physics. It is a classical scientific debate about the very elemental composition of the human body.
This is a fascinating glimpse into the intense intellectual battles of the medieval medical world. I mean, they were throwing punches. The author takes on the prevailing Greek philosophical consensus of the era, specifically targeting titans of medicine like Ibn Sina, also known as Avicenna, whom the text pointedly and boldly calls the misguided philosopher.
Calling Ibn Sina misguided in a historical medical text is like writing a physics paper today and calling Einstein a hack.
It's audacious.
Those are fighting words. So what was the crux of the debate? What were they fighting over?
The Greeks and those who followed their medical philosophy believed that all matter in the universe, including the human body, consisted of four basic literal elements: water, earth, air, and fire.
But the author of our text fiercely rejects this. He accepts that the body contains water, solid earthy parts, and air, but he draws an absolute hard line at fire. He says there is no literal fire inside the human body.
And he doesn't just state his disagreement and move on. He lays out a rigorous, five-point logical, physical, and theological refutation. It is an absolute masterclass in medieval debate.
Let's walk through these 5 points, because the reasoning requires us to really understand how they viewed the physics of the universe at that time. Let's start with his first argument against fire.
The first argument is based on the spatial physics of elements. The author observes that fire naturally ascends. Flames go up, right? They do not naturally descend. If a literal element of fire were to descend from the heavens to the earth to become part of a human body, it would have to travel through the atmosphere. The author argues that it would have to pass through spheres of bitter, freezing cold air up in the sky. He concludes that the relatively minuscule amount of fire destined for a tiny human body would certainly be extinguished by that bitter cold, long before it ever reached the earth to mix into our biology.
Okay, so a spatial and physical impossibility based on their understanding of the atmosphere. It would burn out on the way down.
Right.
Then the second argument looks at the immediate internal environment of the body itself. He says the body is made of solid earthy parts and wet watery parts: blood, phlegm, bone. If a spark of fire were somehow placed inside this environment surrounded by all this cold water and dense earth, how could it possibly survive? It would never ignite. He argues that elements can't just spontaneously turn into fire while hopelessly interconnected with wet, smothering solids.
The third argument builds directly on that internal battle. He says that even if, hypothetically, some fiery parts managed to exist within the human body or within plants, they would be immediately overwhelmed. The text notes a law of nature. The weaker element always succumbs to the stronger. In a biological body that is vastly composed of water and earth, fire is overwhelmingly the weaker element. It would be entirely dissipated by the superior watery parts.
It's a literal battle of the elements, and water wins by sheer volume. You can't have a bonfire in a swimming pool.
Exactly.
Now, the fourth argument is where the author shifts from biological physics to theology, and this is the trump card in this worldview.
Yes, he brings the divine creation narrative into the medical debate. He points out that the Qur'an mentions mankind being created from water, from earth, from soil, from clay. but it never ever mentions humans being created from fire.
And why is that specific omission so vital to his argument?
Because of who is created from fire in this theology. The text quotes a prophetic saying regarding the origins of different beings. It says, "The angels were created from light, while Satan was created from the smokeless flame of fire. As for Adam, he was created from what has been told to you," meaning earth and clay.
Oh, wow.
The author argues that asserting humans have a fiery, elemental part fundamentally contradicts the divine creation narrative. To say humans contain literal fire is to say they share the elemental composition of the jinn, or Satan himself, which the author flatly rejects as heretical.
That is a mic drop theological argument. I mean, you can't argue with that in this context without questioning the creation story itself, but it leaves a massive lingering question.
Which is,
If there is no fire in the body, why are we warm? Why do we have a 98.6-degree body temperature? The Greeks would say, aha, that internal heat proves the existence of the fire element. You can feel it. The author anticipates this entirely with his fifth point, doesn't he?
he does, and his fifth point is remarkably astute regarding physics. He argues that innate heat does not equal literal fire.
How does he prove that without modern thermodynamics?
He provides several observable examples from nature. He says that rapid movement produces heat. The concentrated reflection of sun rays produces heat. And, most importantly, friction produces heat. He uses an analogy. Just because striking a stone with a piece of iron produces a burst of intense heat and sparks, it does not mean the stone itself contains a literal, elemental piece of fire hiding inside it.
Right. The heat is a byproduct of the physical action, not an inherent ingredient in the rock.
Exactly.
He argues that the warmth of the human body is innate heat generated from the biological blending of elements, from the constant movement of blood and organs, and from the body's internal friction. It is biological exhaust, not a literal ember burning in our chest.
The proponents of the Greek fire theory try to counter this. They say, well, if there was no fire element, the body would just be cold. And if it's cold and the environment is cold, the body would freeze solid.
And the author's response to that.
He essentially points out the flaw in their logic regarding temperature equalization. He says that if the body had no fiery part, it would just eventually reach the temperature of its environment. But just because a body is cold doesn't mean it lacks fire. And just because it's warm doesn't mean it contains fire. The innate heat is generated by the presence of the soul and the ongoing biological processes. He completely severs the link between temperature and the elemental existence of fire.
It is a phenomenal debate to read, and it really highlights the absolute depth of thought in this era. They weren't just passively taking things on faith, they were aggressively, rigorously visiting the physics, the biology, the temperaments, and the theology of the human form to build a unified theory of life.
And that brings us full circle to the core mission of this text. The author isn't just trying to win an academic argument about elements for bragging rights. He is trying to establish a comprehensive, infallible system of human healing.
Exactly. To synthesize everything we've unpacked in this deep dive, the text ultimately concludes that prophetic medicine uses three types of remedies for all human suffering. First, natural remedies like adjusting your diet, using single-ingredient herbs, clearing accumulations, and resting.
Right.
Second, divine remedies like prayer, charity, alignment with destiny, and spiritual purification of the heart. And third, a deliberate, careful combination of both.
It is the ultimate holistic model. The author warns with utter certainty that trying to cure the physical body without curing the heart just does not work. You might fix the organ temporarily, you might suppress the fever, but the underlying temperamental or spiritual disease, the doubt, the lust, the cognitive dissonance that will just manifest a new illness somewhere else.
The bad fuel will just break a different part of the engine.
Conversely, curing the heart while the body is ill might not remove the physical sickness immediately, but it brings an eternal spiritual fortitude that transcends the physical suffering entirely.
For you listening to this, think about how incredibly intricate this ancient worldview is. Physical temperaments, digestion, divine destiny, spiritual purity. They are not separate domains of life. They are all gears turning the exact same biological clock. Your hidden intentions affect your stress alters your digestion shifts your bodily temperament, and your temperament dictates your vulnerability to disease. It is a completely, beautifully unified theory of human existence.
It reminds us that we are not just biological machines waiting to be fixed by a pill. We are complex, reactive ecosystems that require profound balance on multiple fronts: intellectual, physical, and spiritual.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, drawing from the text's intense warning about accumulations. Remember the 10 biological urges we discussed: sleep, sneezing, eating, expelling waste. The text strongly warns that the suppression or mismanagement of these basic bodily flows creates the very stagnation that breeds disease.
Right, the bottleneck.
Think about our modern, highly scheduled world. We constantly habitually suppress our biological rhythms to fit into our engineered lives. We jolt ourselves out of deep sleep with blaring alarm clocks, cutting our natural rest short. We sit at desks for prolonged, unnatural hours, stopping the flow of physical movement and blood. We delay meals, or we eat rapidly on the run, overriding our digestion to meet workplace demands. We hold our breath in stressful meetings, accumulating internal pressure.
It's a recipe for disaster in this framework.
If this ancient text is right, if stagnation, suppression, and the bottlenecking of our natural biological flow are the true root of illness, are we, in our relentless pursuit of modern efficiency and productivity, actively engineering the exact diseases of accumulation that this text warned us about centuries ago?
It is a profound and unsettling question. Are our modern optimized routines the very bottlenecks creating our modern chronic ailments?
It certainly makes you view your daily habits and that delayed lunch break very differently. The next time you feel that urge to push through the fatigue or suppress a natural response or ignore a spiritual stressor, remember that x-ray machine we talked about at the beginning. The picture of your health is never just binary. The health of the body and the health of the heart are forever inextricably intertwined. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.